Before we get started on the benefits of the keto diet, I'm going to show you what I look like before I started it and what I look like after I started it. And mind you, I was doing the keto diet a long time ago. This is probably about 5 years ago when this transformation actually happened. But I'm going over my experience for the purposes of the article that's on my website and sharing what I did, the foods I ate, what kind of training I was doing, etc. But here's what I look like right there. I'd say I was probably at 280 pounds right around that time when that before picture took place. And over the course of, the 8-week program that I was doing with the keto diet, I actually lost around 40 pounds down to, this picture right here. And as you can see, there's a big difference between the two. That was the leanest I've ever been in my entire life. I'd say I was probably around 240 pounds at the end of that diet. But basically, for those that don't know what the keto diet is, or the ketogenic diet, it basically involves taking in around 70% fat, 25% protein, and 5% carbs on average of your total caloric, balance for the day. And basically, a lot of the foods you're going to be eating are going to be, meats. You're going to have some kind of vegetables then. They're leafy vegetables. You want to just keep your carbs as low as possible. A lot of people, especially me, found a lot of success with 30 grams or less. But you can go as high as 50 grams. And some people still have a lot of the same benefits. But basically, all the keto diet is eating a lot of animal products. So you're having your meats, you're having, and usually you want the higher fat intake with this diet. So don't be having like chicken breasts and stuff like that. You can have some olive oil and stuff like that to get your fat content up. But with this kind of diet, things like ground beef, steak, chicken thighs, any of those fattier cuts of meat, those kind of things are kind of what the base of the diet is built around. And it kind of has a couple of really cool benefits that I'm going to go over. One of the major benefits I found from the keto diet is actually how satiating it actually is. And basically because of the fat and the protein you're going to be intaking, you're not going to be able to eat as much food, honestly. When I was doing this diet, I was having a lot of ground beef and steak and chicken thighs, and I could go through probably half a pound to a pound of meat, which is only 560 calories max, and I didn't have to eat for another 6 hours, and that made it very easy for me to lose weight, because one of the hardest things to control is hunger when you're trying to lose body fat. So controlling hunger with the keto diet is one of the major benefits I've found. One of the other major benefits I found is actually because of the increased protein intake, you're going to be burning through more calories due to the thermic effect of food. And with protein, you actually burn up to about 30% of the actual calories from the protein. Basically, what this breaks down to is the more protein you're consuming per day, the more calories you're going to burn with a higher caloric yield overall. So if you're eating about, let's say, 1,000 grams of protein a day, which you should not be doing, by the way, 30% of that is around 333 grams or so. So 333 grams would be burnt off. And that's a decent amount of calorie burn. That's over 1,200 calories, I believe, just from protein being ingested and broken down in the body. And so when I was actually doing the keto diet, my training was pretty basic. So I was working 40 hours per week at Goodwill as a donor assistant, basically, where I was helping people with their donations. So I was constantly on my feet, moving all day, and a lot of times I'd be fasting for the majority of the morning, so probably until about noon I wouldn't have my first meal, and then I'd have a decent amount of fats and proteins at that meal, and then I would wait until after work, which is about 3:30, before I had my pre-workout shake, which usually consisted of protein with some heavy whipping cream in it, with maybe a little bit of protein powder, but not a lot. And then for the workouts, it was a very basic 3-day split. So one day, actually all days, I was squatting. I was squatting 3 days a week. I was benching twice a week. I did overhead press one day, deadlift another day, and then pull-ups and dumbbell rows. And that was basically it. That was all the training was. And back then, for training, I really tried to do more intense movements because I was, on the keto diet, you're not going to have a lot of, as crazy as it sounds, keto doesn't give you a billion, calories of, carbohydrates to kind of deal with in your body. So you're going to be having a lot of issues with recovery and performance if you're pushing it too hard with the volume. So if you're going more than, let's say, 10 to 20 reps per set on average, you're probably going to get burnt out pretty quickly. So I try to keep everything within the 5 to 10 rep range for the most part. And then 3 days per week after doing that, I would use a prowler or a sled. And basically I would do 10 trips with that with about 45, 90, or 135 pounds. And I would push that. And that was basically it. So I did that for about 8 weeks, dropped about 40 pounds. And the best part was that I didn't really feel like I lost any performance in the gym. My strength was steadily increasing the whole time. And I didn't have any issues with recovery. The only reason I stopped doing it was because I'm pretty sure that was the end of summer and it was getting into the holidays, so I wanted to focus on building muscle. So I changed to a normal diet where I was eating more carbohydrates and things like that, but that's basically how the training was broken down. And so now I'm actually going to go into a couple of the main things that, some main issues that people come into contact with when they're doing the keto diet, and that is why they're not losing weight. And so one of these major things that I've noticed is that a lot of people think on the keto diet they can just eat whatever they want as long as it doesn't have any carbs in it, and they're fine. But in reality, you have to create a caloric deficit to make this happen. So when I was doing the keto diet, I didn't have to track anything. I was pretty much just eating, salami with like ranch dressing, salads, lots of meat, lots of vegetables, just kind of keeping it as healthy as I possibly could. And as I stopped, I'd have little moments where I wasn't losing as much weight. I would drop some of, the ranch dressing and things like that and put in some healthier options instead with lower calories. Just automatically. I wasn't tracking it, but that's how I did it. But for those of you that are trying this diet out and you're not losing the weight that you think you should, try tracking. If you aren't tracking your calories, then you don't know how much you're eating per day. But try to, lower your calories by like 250 to 500 and just eat the same amount of, the same types of foods you've been eating, but just make them fit in that framework. And then after 2 weeks, if your weight's staying about the same, drop it another 250 and just like do those small little jumps over time instead of all at once, so you don't have a big whoosh effect where, you're suddenly like the gym is really, really hard, your performance is suffering, you're not sleeping well, the weight's plateauing. There's a lot of issues that come with dropping the weight very quickly, so make sure you're dropping those calories slowly to accommodate for that. And another one of the other reasons that a lot of people aren't losing the weight that they think they should is because if you're tracking with the scale and your weight's not going down and you think you should be losing the weight, you're tracking your calories and everything, there might be something else to play, and you might have some inflammation or you might be intolerant to something. So a couple of those things are things like dairy products. So you don't want to have things with carbohydrates in them like yogurt and milk on this diet, but things like butter, cheese, those higher fat options that don't have a lot of carbs, they might have 1 carb or less per serving. Those kind of things can cause inflammation in the body, especially if you're intolerant to them. So people that are lactose intolerant, they're going to have some inflammation from that, unfortunately. So what this kind of does in the body is it adds more bloat, to the body. The inflammation in your body actually gets increases how much you're weighing at any one time. So you want to make sure that if you notice, the weight's not going down the way you want it to, it's possible that you're eating things that, like the cheese, like the butter, that's actually causing inflammation. So if you feel like you're not losing, try that out. Try cutting some of the cheese and that stuff out. A lot of people, they want to be on the keto diet because they hear they can eat cheese and butter and all this other stuff, but for some people it's not going to be appropriate, and that's all there is to it, unfortunately. And that brings us to the end of the video. So if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, definitely let me know. If you guys learned a lot from this video, definitely leave a comment below. And for those of you that tried the keto diet, what did you do? What foods were you eating that allows you to lose the most weight? What kind of training were you doing? Were you training more than I was 3 days a week with 3 days of cardio on the same days? Were you training 6 days a week? Were you doing CrossFit, bodybuilding style training, powerlifting? Let me know in the comments below. And if you guys enjoyed the video and you want to see more content similar to this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out my website at DanteRedgearStrength.com. Also, if you enjoyed this video and would like to learn more, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Until next time, Dante Redgrave.